stars. Reach for the 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 stars. Let me see your hands up.
Roman, it's probably not difficult for your audience to discern who's the corporate suit, who's the entrepreneur, and who's the entertainer here.
For sure, for sure. First of all, it's just crazy to have everybody like on stage together, right? Will, what was kind of your first, hookup with Pat?
Oh, when I met Pat when I was in the 10th grade. I wanted to be a clothing designer, and I think Pat was in the year older than me.
I think so.
Yeah, so he was in the 11th grade. I was in the 10th grade, and was Palisades High School. He lived out in Orange County, but we all knew the same people. And I wanted to design clothes, and there was this clothing company by the name of Zung, and I would turn in my designs. He would turn in his, and it was a cool little community of folks. If you think about it, it was pretty magical. That little 17, 16-year-old cluster of friends that we had. It was Pasquale, the guy that does EDC, Tommy Zung, Pat, the Hooligans, Evidence from Dilated Peoples, Scott Kahn and AM and it was a LMFAO, Red Food. It was just to see us all older and we have success and we do a lot of community work. It was pretty magical how far we go back and the things that we do together now.
Do you see parts of Will the way he is now from when you knew him and when you first met him?
I don't think he's changed at all. He's really busy because he does really big shows and stuff. But he's always been a really good entertainer, dancer, singer, songwriter. I mean, I'm not trying to Will's so great. He is. He really is. And I remember when we were kids. Should I talk about this stuff? It's kind of weird, right?
That's cool.
Okay. But I remember. I just was always thought that it was really amazing how he never crossed the line in his music, where he'd always stay true to himself. Which some of the kids are younger and they want to hear more profanities and things about gangs or drugs or whatever. But he never did that. He always stayed on his own path, which I always applaud him for, thinking, well, he wants to dance, he wants to sing, he wants to be himself, and he's doing it, and he's finding a lot of success. So I've always been really I hate saying it, sounds weird, proud of Will, because I remember when he got his first record deal. He's we got signed by, no, I'm not saying I'm smart, but I could add things up, but we got signed by Ruthless Records, Eazy-E, and their signing bonus, can I say what your signing bonus was?
Yeah.
It was $40,000, but there's 3 guys in the band and a manager and so on.
It was 10 grand.
Oh, was it?
It was 10 grand.
And then he came to my house in Corona Del Mar with his brand new, it was used but brand new Fiero Canary Yellow with a bungee cord holding the hood down.
Yeah. And so I
He's
remember we were driving and he was like, yo, I want you to come down and perform at this show with Cyclone. At a store. I'm like, you got your own store? He was like, yeah. I'm like, how old are you? He was like, I'm turning 18. I'm like, how are you 18 with your own store, dude? So he had his own store at 18, and so I always looked up to Pat as an entrepreneur. Wow, I want to be doing it like that one day. And then I had my little car, just got signed, and he was like, dude, you're tailgating me. I was like, what are you talking about? Because I didn't have a license. He's like, you're tailgating me. You should be careful when you're driving. And I remember that, dude. It was just for me, it was a couple months ago.
He always dressed, okay, we're talking about how do I remember it, but he used to always shop at the thrift stores. Before it was popular, and he'd put together these pea green combinations with knickers and derby hats, blazers, and at first I was like, whoa, that's kind of weird. But it was really fashionable. If you switched out the name for whatever Dior or something, you'd say, wow, that's the newest style. But he'd always be really advanced with his apparel selection. Yeah, it was really cool.
Will, how EKOCYCLE happened for you?
So if you think about,
And explain to people how it works.
so EKOCYCLE, I was recycling old people's clothes ever since I was putting clothes. My family shopped at thrift stores. And we were poor growing up. So I just made the thing that limited me into a style that was, people at school was like, wow, that's different, that's cool. Instead of getting picked on, like you have secondhand clothes, or you have secondhand shoes, or those are hand-me-downs. And they were obviously hand-me-downs. So that's just been a part of my whole makeup of how do I take something old or take something that one would consider trash and turn it into something valuable and with aesthetic and add coolness to it just by having confidence and understanding of what it's all about. So EKOCYCLE came, it's actually the fabric of me, but traveling around the world, you get to see things, like going to Holland and seeing shoes that are made out of, rubber tires, recycled, recycled leather bags and turn them into jackets. But you come to America and you don't find things like that. And when you see things that are recycled, it's design whack and it looks ugly. But the stuff that's aspiration was limited and very expensive and you can't find it anywhere. So one day I went to CGI, Clinton Global Initiative, and I learned about the 2020 Millennium Goals in 2008. And I learned that Coca-Cola wanted to be zero waste by year 2020. So right around the same time, Black Eyed Peas had a big show in I think it was Costa Rica it was Costa Rica. And usually we would have a quick out. Like we perform, the song will be playing, I got a feeling, and they're thinking we're gonna come back, but we leave in the truck so we don't get stuck in traffic. So this time we missed our quick out. So we were like, what are we gonna do? We have to stay in the venue for 2 hours. There's 100,000 people leaving, it's gonna be traffic. So let's just stay in the venue and party here. Instead of having an after party somewhere else in Costa Rica, let's just have it at the venue and invite people to party with us on stage. So we did that, and I saw the aftermath of our show. Just it was riddled with litter, and the recycle bins were pretty close, actually. They didn't have to walk too far. So I just remembered what I learned at Clinton Global Initiative, and it was the first time I held myself responsible for, waste. A lot of times we don't realize that each one of us are the reason why the world is the way it is. It isn't like they put a gun to our heads and asked us to consume it. And it isn't like they put a gun to our heads and asked us to chuck it on the floor. That was just out of laziness or, denial on how we participate and contribute to waste. And let's take the people that do recycle at home. If you recycle at home, doesn't mean that your city recycles. So I just started, it was an epiphany, like, wow. And I learned that New York is one of those cities that don't recycle. And there's families that recycle. Hey, we got to put this in the, don't forget to put the plastic in the plastic container. But then the city doesn't do that. So I started thinking of how can we create a commodity out of waste and realize that it's only waste because we wasted an opportunity to turn it into something else. So I started thinking, like, wow, I'm gonna make this deck. I'm gonna create a deck. I know I'm gonna be in Atlanta, so I asked my friend over at AEG, Randy Phillips, if he could hook up a meeting with Coca-Cola. He was like, yeah, why don't you just talk to them backstage? I'm gonna get them, they're gonna come back. So he, hooked up the backstage because they were promoting our tour, and I met Joe and B. Perez. And they were there. I'm like, hey, I got this concept I want to pitch to you guys. Can we have a meeting? So, there's CMOs and heads of companies and big execs that wouldn't have done that. They would have said, oh, well, I'll contact your manager. Or who's your agent? Right? So they were like, yeah, sure. When you want to do it? I was like, oh, we're going to be back in Atlanta in 2 months. I think it was a month. He was like, yeah, we'll set up a meeting then. I was like, whoa, I got to make my deck. So we were on tour. So on our days off, I would go to Kinko's and work my deck out. You know, because you don't have, you know, things like that on a tour bus. So I made my deck. I was like, wow, I want to start making. So somebody showed me a deck they made. I was like, yo, I want to start making decks. So I did all my research on what EKOCYCLE was supposed to be, the vision I had. Well, you know, I was like, I know the synopsis. The synopsis is, how can Coca-Cola become a verb? And if Coca-Cola doesn't realize that you have to be a verb in today's market, then they need to Google it. Because Google is a verb. And you don't see Google commercials. They are in the fabric of how you socialize. They're verbs in society. So how does Coke become a verb? Okay, well, we're going to take the word Coke, turn it backwards, and it's a process. Those are EKOCYCLE Levi jeans. So EKOCYCLE Ruka shorts.
I mean,
EKOCYCLE Beats headphones.
That's awesome.
You know?
And you know, Roman, it takes somebody, sometimes, you know, when you're in a big bubble in a big company, you don't see these and you can't connect these dots. And if we're really someone with Will's vision, it kind of shakes you and you say, wait a minute, yeah, that's a bigger vision. Because maybe we would be looking at something at an incremental level. But this was like, wow, we have this commitment, but at the same time, how do we get to it? How do we actualize it in the marketplace for mutual benefit? And sometimes it takes the people on the outside of the firm to really see the opportunity.
Yeah, and you know, when you have an idea and you're a musician and you're traveling, your business plan isn't always right. I stumbled a couple of times with the business plan, but Coca-Cola was so open-minded and believed in the concept that pitched it in 2009. 2010, the business, end of 2009, beginning of 2010, the business plan was kind of weird. So they were like, we worked together to get it where we are now. And it took about, and that says a lot, because they could have been like, oh, that's a good concept, see you later. You know, there's no way to implement. We worked through it from 2009, 2010, 2011, and then we launched it 2012. So that's real commitment, and we're just starting. You know, we're starting and we have Ruka, Beats by Dre, MCM, Case Made, New Era hats, Addidas, and we just closed NBA. And what that means is, you know, it's not the first time EKOCYCLE didn't invent, you know, taking plastic bottles and turning them into jackets. But what happens is companies, they have their one item and they market the other items, and that one item disappears and it gets swallowed by the stuff that people are buying and have no means to really market that one item. So what EKOCYCLE becomes is an umbrella with a stamp of approval of the process, and the affiliation and connection to other brands and their efforts, you know, makes it louder, right? So we create a commodity out of waste and educate the youth and also adults that the plastic bottle does not necessarily have to turn into a plastic water bottle again, but it could turn into glasses, hats, chairs, shoes, pants, pins, watches, necklaces, and even mouth guards.
Awesome. Joe, if there's one thing that you guys don't have a shortage of, are decks and people pitching you
Correct.
things.
We're not short of ideas.
So maybe you guys can talk about, has the relationship with an artist changed? Because you have so many artists you have the choice to work with.
Sure.
And you can just put them on the cover of your ads. Number one, what's that dynamic? And two, seems like there's a lot of depth to this, right? To your guys' relationship. Maybe you could talk about the depth and, you know, the changing relationship from that mindset.
Yeah, well, I think Pat touched on a lot of it with the notion of authenticity, because I think that particularly with millennials, that's the one thing that they need to see front and center. I mean, I just as an example, as a sidebar, you know, do you really believe Shaq is sitting in that Chevy, that small Chevy? You know, I don't believe that when I see that. Do you really believe J-Lo is driving that little Fiat? I don't think so. You know, so it doesn't seem authentic to me. I think that when you state out as a corporation that you're going to be committed to a certain principle, a principle is not a principle unless there's a cost involved, right? Unless you're prepared to make the effort from not only a monetary but also an effort point of view in order to realize the benefits for the greater world. So I think that the thing that you have to understand is when you're in these kind of entrepreneurial activities, they're going to evolve. The business model is going to evolve and change, and you have to have a partner who's flexible, as Will said, to evolve with it. It will change. EKOCYCLE in a couple of years will be different than it is today. But if you're not constantly evolving, then you won't be relevant. So a lot of that is having a partner where you're comfortable and understanding that things are going to change. We need to go where the biggest, if you keep your eye on the prize, and the larger prize is motivating and inspiring people to recycle, then fundamentally, you've got to find we're always going to have to be shifting and moving as to how you get there and create that movement, a more powerful movement. Because, as Will said, there's huge upside and opportunity, particularly in the United States and all around the world on this issue.
And if you think about like technology that we have today, like it's so easy to be an artist now than it was not just when I wanted to be an artist. Let's take Miles Davis. Let's go back to Otis Redding, right? But let's go back to the beginning of the music industry. And when you go back to the beginning of the music industry, not music, but the industry, also television, it's at the center of it is technology. And that technology is RCA. They bought Victor's Talking Machine and created our record company, our standardized contract. They invented what we call radio. It's the reason why artists don't get paid terrestrial radio rights when our songs play on radio. Because it was always a loss leader to sell vinyl. And that same system exists even on iTunes now. Like when our songs get sold on iTunes, it's not physical. We are recouping as if it was a physical when actually it's a license. So our shit is real out of whack. So now you have to put that in consideration of what's an artist tomorrow. And what is an artist supposed to do? Is an artist supposed to, should an artist stand for a cause? If you're gonna follow me on Twitter, where am I leading you? Right now we're following followers. Right now we're replying and commenting but not understanding. So all these things are gonna change. This is the interim, this ain't forever. This is the beginning. There's the new platform, new way to connect, and that new way of connect is gonna spawn and birth new icons that people follow because they know they're leading them somewhere. They know they're connecting the dots. They know that they're raising awareness and are a part of a collective, a conscious collective of what's coming. So, one day in the near future, the concept of composition is going to change because you're going to have some bracelet that connects to that knows your heart rate, your temperature, your perspiration, your steps, how many calories you burn, and also going to be able to compose to your energy. And you're going to publish your song for how you feel right now. It's no longer, that song made you really touch a core. How about there's going to be an application that plays what you're feeling, how you're feeling, when you're feeling it? That's like in the next couple of years. Because the technology points that is what music is going to be. And the reason why it's going to shift and disrupt in that way is because none of us could really, really identify who invented the piano in the first place. Who's the guy that invented the lute or the flute? We don't know any of these folks. We have disrespected engineering and technology to the point where it's going to disrupt what we think content curation and musicianship is today. So the idea of a song tomorrow is going to change drastically.
Well, what do you think? It seems that artists and entrepreneurship is kind of a recent phenomenon. Artist managers are becoming entrepreneurs. What's your perspective on the way, and speaking for other artists, that you like to work with brands or agencies or, what are your...
Actually, it's not a new thing, like artist, entrepreneur. Quincy Jones is one of the first guys. Right, here's a trumpet player who had a label, who's responsible for Michael Jackson being Michael Jackson, who's responsible for Oprah and Whoopi Goldberg, who's responsible for Vibe magazine, who's responsible for Will Smith and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Quincy Jones is the dude, right? Popular culture has this disease called amnesia, to where we don't remember what got us here. And we think the new guy is the new guy. Well, actually, he's inspired by the original guy. We have no concept of original anymore. So it's going to look a lot like Quincy Jones.
Cool. I got time for... I got time for one more question. Maybe each of you guys can jump in. What's your vision? Where's EKOCYCLE going to be 3 years, 5 years from now?
5 years from now?
Pat, why don't you go first, and we'll go down to there.
Where EKOCYCLE's
Yeah, for you, for your brand.
Oh, well, we just started with EKOCYCLE. We did the board short. I think it took 11 bottles, and we want to extend the product category and build awareness. And, you know, because it is authentic, and because Coca-Cola is making this effort, and I think a frontman Will is great because he's the real deal. Besides EKOCYCLE, he does the transformation. There's a lot of behind the scenes that make Will and why he does things. And so we just want to, you know, be a part of it and do our contribution and open up to our platform and the people that subscribe to RVCA. We want to subscribe to EKOCYCLE and the efforts and what it's actually all about, and that's sustainability. So
Cool, thanks,
that's
Joe.
where I see it.
I think EKOCYCLE as a movement will still be in the early stages, but I think it'll be building momentum. I think EKOCYCLE as an ingredient or a sign of approval will be much more pervasive on a larger variety of products at a lot of different price points.
Cool. Will?
5 years from now, EKOCYCLE will have more partners. Hopefully, it will have its own retail, whatever retail is 5 years from now, because that's going to change dramatically, brick and mortar. And the ones that are going to be around are going to be retail stores that are relevant and have purpose other than just coming in and buying and walking out with stuff. So, and because EKOCYCLE at the core is based on awareness, technology, education, and an opportunity to create a different way of consumption and post-consumption, EKOCYCLE will be a very important verb in society.
Cool. Thank you, guys. That was awesome.
Reach for